Kia ora, talofa namaste, haere and welcome to the Nichecache. This is our big old podcast coming at you on a Tuesday, and we are here to go deep into Aotearoa sporting matters. We got some Auckland FC in the Aussie Cup. We got Blackcaps versus Zimbabwe, the greatest test series in the world right now. We got Warriors versus the Bulldogs. And I think we're doing that across the top three grades. New South Wales Cup first, NRLW, NRL, Saturday evening in Sydney. Thank you, Jah, Buddha, Allah, God, the stars, the moon and the sun, that this game is not at Mount Smart Stadium, because the Warriors, apparently they stink it up at Mount Smart Stadium, and we'll be digesting all of that. And I mean, what's the opposite of digesting? We don't want to say, because it's a bit icky, but we might also be doing that as well. Tall Blacks in the Asia Cup. We are here to roll deep through Aotearoa sporting matters, but there's only one place to start. And this news came through after our podcast last Tuesday. We have to make an official announcement. The drone lady is now officially Bev Priestman, Wellington Phoenix coach. And last week, we flushed the dunny with the drone lady and the drone situation, aside from shouting out Rebecca Stott, Kiwi football extraordinaire, who is a drone expert, a drone extraordinaire. So you can hit her up for your drone inquiries. Bev Priestman, she doesn't need to worry about that anymore, because she is now the Wellington Phoenix women's coach. So that means we talk about her as Bev Priestman, coach of the Wellington Phoenix women. We'll get into the signing of CJ Bott and some of the more intricate Wellington Phoenix matters later on. But I just want to early vibe check from you. We've seen the press conference about her announcement as coach. We've heard her talk about signing CJ Bott. What is your vibe check on Bev Priestman and how she wants to operate as Wellington Phoenix women's coach in her first season, in which the Wellington Phoenix, I think they're chasing their first taste of finals footy ever?
Yep, never got that far in the last few years, even though they sort of with each year, it felt like they were taking another step towards being a more, competitive team in the A-League. And they sort of did with each of those seasons, but they didn't actually get there in any of those previous years. They never actually got to the top six. So, never quite managed to see it all the way through. There was always the fatal flaw of maybe, there was one year they just couldn't score goals, couldn't convert their chances. It was the year where they just every time they played away from home, they lost by one goal. They were in the contest every single time, but just kept losing narrow defeats. And then last year was just I'm not sure what happened last year, because it was a little bit of both of those previous fatal flaws, but neither of them to the same extent. I think maybe they just there have been times as well where they've just been riddled with injuries. They had bits of all those things last year, and just for whatever reason, it just never clicked. But it's always felt because they started with Gemma Lewis, then Natalie Lawrence takes over, then Paul Temple takes over, and all of those were sort of internal promotions. Obviously, the first year you had nowhere to internally promote from, but they did have a heavy link with New Zealand football for that first season, especially. And Gemma Lewis and Nat Lawrence, who was the assistant in that year, were also concurrently the New Zealand under-20s coaches, and so they picked a squad that was heavily built around that upcoming under-20 World Cup squad, which did okay. Probably didn't need to spend the whole A-League season preparing for that. Maybe could have signed some more experienced players and been a little bit better from the get-go. That was also tricky because I think that was a COVID year, so they didn't even have any home games. But every one of those previous coaches was kind of an internal promotion type one, a next step up. This is the opposite. this is like getting the best possible available international voice, but someone who has worked in New Zealand football back in the day before, someone who is, related to New Zealand football, married to a former football fern who happens to also be the academy boss at the Wellington Phoenix right now. That's Emma Humphreys. So it's kind of like they've had these 4 years building up, trying to be like organic, trying to be developmental about it, trying to have that kind of more nurturing idea. They got somewhere, but there's obviously just some kind of hurdle they can't get over. Now they're just getting a very much a win now type coach, someone who's come in and immediately has said, Bev Priestman's talking about like, we're going to be the hardest working team. We're going to press without possession. We're going to be physical and strong, and we're going to be, super fit. We're going to have a deep bench and all these things like cutting zero corners, not making allowances for those kind of things. I suspect that's going to be quite a demanding team to play for, but I also think that's clearly like that's how you shake it up. That's how you get the team to the next level. So, and the fact that a lot of players from last season and before have re-upped to want to play in this team, like who want to play for Bev Priestman as well, is a very good sign, because it's not like she just walked in the door the other day when the ban expired. I think people have known for a long time that this was coming and what was going on. Even if she wasn't like involved in the signings, people knew what they were getting into when they were re-signing for this team. They knew who they were likely to be playing for. And I find all of that very exciting, I think, and it's very exciting to see a lot of last year's squad players like Mackenzie Barry, Grace Jale, Tiana Jaber all re-signing, players who, by the way, fit really nicely within that kind of combative approach, that hard-working approach. But then also they've gone and signed the New Zealand international who best represents that as well, in CJ Bott. So there's a method here to what they're trying to achieve, and the signings all seem to fit very nicely within that idea.
And that's CJ Bott, who, just following your footballing yarns, is a legendary tackler.
Yes.
Right. So
like one of the best in the world of that art.
Beauty. So we'll be chatting a lot about that later on the podcast when we get to the football section. But we need a bit of mindfulness to get to ground ourselves in the Aotearoa sporting mangroves.
Yeah. So how about a very short poem from D.H. Lawrence then? In that case, it's called Self-Pity, and it goes, "I never saw a wild thing sorry for itself. A small bird will drop frozen dead from a bough without ever having felt sorry for itself."
Can you repeat that?
Yes. I just
too much poetry going on. I was tapping into the rhyme scheme and the structure, and I just need the information.
Yeah, there's not a lot of rhyme scheme going on in this one, but I never saw a wild thing sorry for itself. A small bird will drop frozen dead from a bough without ever having felt sorry for itself.
And
wild animals, they don't have pity,
And we are wild things.
We are indeed.
Although we're also higher consciousness than animals. So that's probably where we get the pity and the feeling sorry for ourselves, because our minds are just a bit sharper, a bit more expansive than the old animals. That's obviously what differentiates us, but
also more distracted.
And like nothing really good comes from feeling sorry for yourself.
And it's clearly, according to that poem at least, like it's not a natural state. That's when you start feeling self-pity, you kind of like, it's that thing about thinking. You're not thinking about the act that you're doing. You're sort of like commenting upon your own thoughts, which is just staying still. Like you're not actually doing anything in that case. You're running around in circles. You're not actually progressing anything. But we'll try to take a lesson from the wild birds who they don't care. You can insult them, they don't mind.
And they poo wherever they want. They don't have Yeah, let's just say they poo wherever they want. If you're watching birds, you're watching them take a poo wherever they please, and I don't encourage humans to do that, but it is a nice little insight into the minds of animals. We've also got the Tall Blacks preparing for the Asia Cup. Can you just update us on the basics? Like, when's their first game? Who are they playing against? What is the schedule, the flow of these games at the Asia Cup? I have seen that they have been pretty successful in their warm-up activities, wins against better nations in the basketballing world, which does hype up this Asia Cup campaign pretty nicely. We've had the New Zealand under-19 men do fantastic at the under-19 World Cup. We've had the Tall Ferns solid once again at the Asia Cup. And now we've got the Tall Blacks competing in the Asia Cup. So we'll roll through some of the basics to get us started.
So yes, basics is that this is the third time that the Tall Blacks have gone to the Asia Cup since Oceania got like incorporated into the Asian Confederation. The first time they finished fourth, the second time they finished third. So stands to reason that this time we should be hopefully trying to finish second, which is like genuinely the way the draw worked out. That's a possibility, because if we top our group and Australia tops our group, we wouldn't have to play Australia in the semi-final like we did in losing cases in each of those previous two Asia Cups. So if it's not Australia, I mean, Japan's very good. We actually lost to the Philippines in a game in Philippines during qualifying for this. We didn't thrash them when we came back to New Zealand, but it's like goes to show that's a a competitive side they could come up against. We don't know what China might be up to. Teams like Jordan can be a bit of a slippery opponent at times. Like there's some good teams in this competition, but they're all teams that the Tall Blacks can beat, except maybe for Australia. Although, I mean, we did beat Australia the last time we played them. It was the third game of a series we'd already lost, but we did beat them in Hamilton a few months ago. Not a lot of crossover between either the Australian or the New Zealand squad from those games, but still it's the Tall Blacks, and the Tall Blacks have an established identity that we know we're going to see that no matter which players are out there playing. So yes, it starts tonight, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. against Iraq. That's the first game. We got Philippines on early hours of Friday morning. We got Chinese Taipei 6 a.m. on Sunday. So those are the three group games. We should win all three of those. If we win all three of those, we go straight through the quarterfinals. If we go straight through the quarterfinals, there's sort of like a few ramifications on who we might play there, because it depends on who finishes where and who goes into the playoff round before that and who advances. But that's likely to be a winnable quarterfinal. And in the semi-final, as long as it's not against Australia, is a potential winnable one. So we got a chance to do pretty well here. The squad was finalized after the two sort of warm-up legs in China. They played a few games in Guangdong. They played a few games in Shenzhen. Turned out to be just playing the same teams both times in each of those tournaments, which was a little bit weird, but it's all right. We managed to play Brazil a second time and beat them after they beat us the first time. Beat Guangdong twice, beat Montenegro once in the middle of that. So some good victories here for a Tall Black squad that is pretty inexperienced. And we'll be hoping to see similar things to what we saw from the Tall Ferns, where it's like there's some players who are not new to the international environment, but who maybe are new to being like the star player in this environment. And we saw that nicely with the Tall Ferns. We had players like Emmy Shearer and Chelsea Whitaker and even a bit of like Taylor Dalton, some of these types, Rebecca Pizzi certainly, who really advanced their cases as international players and stepped up. Esmeralda Goldrick as well, going from being like a solid starter to being the key player, like the star on the team. That's a difficult leap to make. That is one that, by the looks of the warm-up games, Flynn Cameron will be that guy. Like, he's been heavily involved in all of their good results, including a lot of like crunch time buckets there, so taking over when it matters most. Mojave King will also be an important guy. Probably expect Mojave King to play the kind of like Corey Webster role that you often get, where it's like here's the shooter with a free license. Here's the guy who might just take over and score 15 points in a quarter and really lead things. But then, like, around those guys, you have, say, well, you have experienced guys like Taylor Britt's there, Jordan Natai's there, Toy Smith-Milner, but someone like Tane Murray played quite a lot in those warm-up games. So he's about to start his NBL career, having just finished up in college. Well, he was a DP for the Breakers before he went over, so it's not the start of his NBL career, but he is playing for Brisbane this year on a full contract. Ben Gold as well, the only college player in there. Carlin Davison, also Dante Russo-Nance, like all those guys are early 20s. I think Russo-Nance himself has only recently turned 20, so he's the youngest guy in the squad. Even someone like Jack Andrew, a bit of a breakout player in the most recent NBL. So there's a lot of these guys who, like, we don't, they might just be amazing in this. You know, someone we've certainly seen the highlight reels that that Carlin Davison can put together. Like, there's room there for players to just make big steps up, like we saw from the Tall Ferns at their Asia Cup. And the way the draw has worked out gives us a decent path to hopefully have a pretty competitive semi-final if we take care of business in the group stage and make sure we finish first and jump straight through to the quarters there and dodge Australia in the semis. So it was one of those ones where it's like when the squad's announced and you're looking at the players who aren't there and you're sort of trying to figure out how this might work and what the combinations might be like. You're thinking, well, yeah, all right, it's just one of those. It is what it is. You pick who's available kind of tours, and then they start winning games and across the warm-up tours. Then they start you start seeing how some of these players fit together and positionally and all this, and you start digging into the draw a little bit and seeing how the path is fairly nicely laid out. And bottom line of that is now I'm actually really excited for seeing what this Tall Blacks team can do. This Tall Blacks team that has, like, I mean, 2 or 3 of these guys might make a full strength World Cup / Olympic squad if it was picked tomorrow. But I still think that this is a really competitive team that can do better than we've ever done at a Nation Cup before. So, yeah, I'm pretty fizzed for this one. I'm excited to see how they rip in and to be able to track this thing, because I think there's a good chance we do pretty well here. Like, the Tall Ferns probably exceeded expectations. I'd say their finish was about per expectation, but the performances in a few of those defeats were more competitive than I expected. So that's where the exceeding expectations came through from them. And I think the Tall Blacks have every opportunity to do the same and then more so.
Which would sum up the state of New Zealand basketball very nicely, considering what the under-19 lads did. We've got players around the world. We've got players playing. Well, we've got one player playing in the NBA. We've got a fantastic GM doing great stuff with the Brooklyn Nets. Interesting to see how that progresses. You are Sean Marks's biggest fan, so I do appreciate your insights there. But it's, New Zealand basketball, obviously, or not obviously, but I think there is an undercurrent of rugby league growth at the lower levels that is, like, to be honest, it's in tune with football. It's in tune, like cricket's the same thing. So maybe I don't want to rank these undercurrents that are happening at the grassroots levels, but I mean, basketball's right up there, and no surprises then, given the state of grassroots basketball, junior basketball, any type of basketball across Aotearoa, that has flowed into how Aotearoa plays basketball on a global stage as well. Make sure you're tapped into our website, thenichecache.com, for all the deep dives. We do have a Tall Blacks preview. We've got a Tall Ferns review. We've got the under-19 lads review. We have lots of deep dives on our website. Got a test series notebook, Blackcaps versus Zimbabwe. You can still read about the T20 Tri-Series victory. And of course, make sure you're signed up to our newsletter, which is through Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. That goes out every Monday and Thursday, full of Aotearoa sporting information. We've got half of it pretty much is free for everyone. And then if you upgrade to a paid Substack subscription, or you join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/nichecache, you get even more Aotearoa sporting insights. Every week, dropping New Zealand Warriors junior notes. We've got some miscellaneous Kiwi-NRL, Aotearoa Rugby League notes. I did Blackcaps overseas test cricket stats yesterday. And you dove deeper, even deeper into the Wellington Phoenix women, as well as a full list of Flying Kiwis transfers here. So that is to say, our newsletter every Monday and Thursday is full of New Zealand sports information. And if you're generous enough to help us out with a paid Substack subscription or joining the Patreon whānau, both of which are a couple dollars a month, there's even more stuff for you. So shout out to everyone helping us out, funding our mahi. And if you just want to make a donation, you can hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee as well. The Rugby League. I'll just hold fire on the Warriors because there's a few. I did have this in the paid section of our newsletter yesterday because we've just had news that Xavier Willison, he is out injured. So we know Jerome Hughes is out injured. Now, I'm just acting as if the Kiwis are playing tonight. So who knows what will happen at the end of the season. But if the Kiwis were playing tonight, sure, I want Jerome Hughes in the team. He's our best halfback from Aotearoa. But we still have, Kieran Foran's doing well. Dylan Brown isn't playing, so that's a bit weird, but still think he's the best number 6 for Aotearoa. And then you've got two pretty solid halves backing up that role with Cody Nikarima and Te Maire Martin. Still think Chanel Harris-Tavita will continue to represent Samoa, so I don't include him in that mixer. Willison hasn't played for the Kiwis yet. So it's not a major impact if we lose Willison. He's a Cook Islands international who I think will represent the Kiwis at some point coming out of Taharoa in the Waikato. And hopefully that coincides with Tanika Willison playing for the Kiwi Ferns at some point. That would be fantastic. The cool thing for the Kiwis, though, is there's a lot of really good middle forwards. So you got that top tier, Fisher, Harris, Tapane, Leota, and Nelson Asafa Solomona, who is in his annual suspension sin bin. So that's all good. Happens every year, no worries. The funky thing, though, is that the emerging young forwards have taken massive leaps this year. And by emerging, I'm talking Nafahu White, Griffin Neem, Leo Thompson, and Aaron Clark. All of whom are playing significant roles for their NRL team. And to me, it's summed up by their minutes. So their minutes last season compared to their average minutes per game this season. Nafahu White, 33 minutes last year. 55.5 minutes this year. Griffin Neem, 39.6 minutes per game last year. 44.4 this year. Leo Thompson, he played the most minutes of these dudes last year, 49.2. Somehow he's got even more minutes, 54.9. And of course, Aaron Clark going from 38.8 minutes to 57.2 minutes per game. All four of those dudes also have just fantastic mahi. Nafahu White's a leader in that Roosters forward pack in the middle. Griffin Neem, he's starting games now more consistently. Leo Thompson's one of, him and Tyson Frizzell are the main dudes for the Knights. And Aaron Clark, right now, he's the main dude in the middle for the Warriors. And that's the kind of second tier. Fisher, Harris, Tapane, Moses, Leota are still my top 3 middle forwards for the Kiwis. Willison's also played a bit of edge forward for the Broncos this year, but again, he hasn't played for the Kiwis, and we also have some really good edge forwards. Isaiah Papali'i can play middle and edge at an international level, so he's a very useful, valuable player for the Kiwis to have in their squad. Him and Britton Nakora are the best middle edge forwards for me. And then you've got Maratania Kori can play middle and edge as well. He's doing that nicely, so he's in the mix. Scott Sorensen is a really good edge forward for the Panthers, and Jordan Ricky has been pretty impressive this season as well. So all of which is to say, I think the Kiwis are well stocked in the forward pack. And, considering Cody Nikarima, Te Maire Martin, they've played for the Kiwis before, add in Jerome Hughes, you got 5 halves right there who have all played for the Kiwis. Foran, Hughes, Brown, Ieremia, Tomato Martin. So that's all good. A Kiwi Ferns related note. The Broncos had another win. So they're second. Knights are second as well. They're 4-1. Roosters are 5-0 to start NRLW. And Cowboys are 4th, but the Warriors beat the Cowboys at the wet Magic round. But Gayle Broughton and Rosie Kelly have both slotted into the halves. Gayle Broughton was doing this last season, but she has gone from less than 60 kick meters per game in her first 3 seasons to 110. So she's doing a lot more kicking for the Broncos. Rosie Kelly was a centre for the Eels last year. Now she's in the halves for the Cowboys. No kicking meters last year. 74.2 kick meters per game this year. So when you think, okay, what's a position that the Kiwi Ferns have struggled to match Australia in? It's the halves. I think Tyler King returned to footy with the Sharks. We got Racine McGregor. We have Gayle Broughton. Rosie Kelly in the halves. Patricia Maliepo could play for the Kiwi Ferns. I think she's going to play for Tonga. That's just a hunch I have. So Maliepo would be fantastic to have for the Kiwi Ferns, but I'm just getting that leaning that she's going to play for Tonga. So still there, you've got Gayle Broughton doing more kicking, Rosie Kelly doing more kicking. That's going to be very important for the Kiwi Ferns. Just to put a little bit more pressure on those Racine McGregor and Tyler King halves as well. Warriors adjacent. We had news that Edward Kosi is going to be moving to the Rabbitohs. So the Rabbitohs have signed Tawha from the Warriors New South Wales Cup team and Kosi from the New South Wales Cup team. Good for them. Like both. The weird thing for the Warriors right now with me is that there's a few weird things. They suck at Mount Smart. They got some just some weird stuff happening that we'll get to in a jiffy. But I don't feel like the backs have taken their opportunities this season. I don't think Graham Telfer took his opportunity. I don't really think Edward Kosi's taken his opportunities, even though he's doing well in New South Wales Cup. This is the thing. These guys haven't stepped up to the NRL and commanded consistent selection. Even Rocco Berry, I reckon this was his worst NRL season so far. Ieremia-Toeava took a bit of a dip this year, didn't take his opportunities. The only dude, and even I'm still not that mad with Tana Boyd, but you could make a case that Tana Boyd and Tomato Martin haven't snapped up their opportunity in the halves. The only dude who I feel like has really taken his opportunity is Taintua Piki. But the rest of those outside, not just outside backs, but the backs who have stepped into the NRL team, I just don't feel like they have told Andrew Webster, you got to pick me. Even full strength, you got to pick me. Like, that's how good I'm playing. And so swing back to Kosi and Graham Telfer. I think the Rabbitohs need that type of depth in their squad. I think Graham Telfer has more NRL upside for the Rabbitohs. I think the Warriors, we know their development pipeline. They got fantastic outside backs coming through. C.O. Kelly's probably going to play NRL next year. Dayon Amatuano is going to add more depth to the wing. Centres. Kailis Putoko's looked good in New South Wales Cup for his one game. You've got Patrick Moymoy is going to be a factor. Brandon Norris is going to be a factor. Like, these dudes are going to step into the New South Wales Cup team. While I'm on that topic, I was thinking just how to view each grade in the Warriors ecosystem, let's say that. Harold Matthews Cup, under 17s. Now, this is obviously tinged by the fact that the Warriors have won that competition. So obviously I'm going to big up that competition, right? I'm going to say Harold Matthews Cup, that is the big dog, big Donny junior competition. SG Ball, under 19, to me, that is pre-season footy. Harold Matthews Cup, that's pre-season as well. Like, it's in February, it's in March, but all the best under 17s are playing that competition in New South Wales Rugby League. Under 19s, some of those dudes go back to school. They go back to first 15. Some of those dudes go back to club footy. So it's like a pre-season activity, and then the best under 19s, they start the Jersey Flegg season. So Jersey Flegg Cup, to me, that is the platform to play your way into New South Wales Cup. And obviously NRL, that's the premier, but that's like in a different universe. So New South Wales Cup, if you're thinking about your local sports club, New South Wales Cup is the first 11. It's the premier squad. Jersey Flegg is the platform to get into the New South Wales Cup team. Don't know if that makes sense, but that's just how I'm viewing it in my mind. And the Warriors have like under 19 outside backs who are playing under 21s. They got under 21 outside backs who are playing New South Wales Cup. So I'm not too worried about losing Edward Kosi or Moala Graham-Taufa. And we talked about this last week. I don't think the Warriors are going to be desperate to sign outside backs. And I'd also suggest, like, sure, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck might just want more money. But if there's no reason why Roger Tuivasa-Sheck can't keep playing rugby league in the NRL. I wrote in the newsletter yesterday in the paid section, statistically, this is one of his best seasons as an NRL player. Let alone being, I reckon, the best player for the Warriors this year. So there, like, if Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, maybe he just loves being in Auckland. He loves being around the youngsters from South Auckland, many of whom grew up in his area of Otara, Papatoi, Mangere East, Otahu. Maybe Roger Tuivasa-Sheck just loves the club, loves the environment, and he doesn't need more money. I think a lot of that stuff is just leverage to make sure you're getting a little bit more money from the Warriors. Maybe his family's settled here. What I'm cooking up as a hot take is maybe Roger Tuivasa-Sheck just keeps playing for the Warriors. Like, maybe he doesn't just leave at the end of his next contract, which I think might be next season. Maybe you just have Roger Tuivasa-Sheck on the wing for the next 5 years. That's how good he is. Right? Like, this is one of his best seasons as a senior player. There's no reason to suggest that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he's got off-field dramas, he's on the piss, he's not taking care of his body. No, apparently he's one of the most professional rugby league union players we've ever seen. So I'm not going to assume that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's just out the door. I'm kind of hoping he's just locked in for another few years, because that's going to be very helpful for the Warriors, and I think it's going to be beneficial for Tuivasa-Sheck. All of which is to say, when you're thinking about the departures of Graham-Taufa and Ed Kosi, the Warriors have ample talent within their pipeline already. I don't think they need to sign outside backs. But then you've also got the Rabbitohs, who have increased their Aotearoa flavour immensely over the last 12 months. We've seen Bailey Bentley-Harpe come into their system, progress into the NRL after he started with the Roosters coming out of Northland. We've seen the Rabbitohs pick up Salisi Ata from the Sharks last summer. Earlier this season, they picked up Devonte Mihinui, who was with the Sea Eagles. Then he had a little cup of coffee with the Bulldogs. Then he moved to the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs already had Nazareth Tawha, who was a Marist junior from Auckland. They signed him from Queensland. So Ata and Mihinui both joined the Rabbitohs ahead of this season. Now they've signed Graham Telfer and Edward Kosi. The funky thing is, and we saw this with the Bulldogs women's team, the Rabbitohs and the Panthers do not have NRLW teams. But they are already recruiting players from Aotearoa. The Bulldogs didn't have an NRLW team last year and the year before, but their women's New South Wales Premiership team was full of wahine from Aotearoa. The Rabbitohs, their New South Wales Premiership team, you've mainly got Keisha Church and Kiana Ray. You've also got Jasmine Tupou-Wichman, who's been in the Rabbitohs system for a while now. Those players were recruited from Aotearoa. All of which, wrap it up, is that the Rabbitohs love Aotearoa. They're building that up. They used to have one of the fewest, one of the smallest Kiwi-NRL crews, but now they're building it up, and it's only boosted by signing Graham Telfer and Edward Kosi. But I am curious what you reckon about my Roger Tuivasa-Sheck hot take.
Well, I mean, is it even a hot take? I think you're right that a lot of the times when you start to get like contract dramas finding their way into the papers, especially like a year and a half out from that contract actually being up, which means that he's not imminently looking to move. It means that he's probably imminently looking to negotiate or start negotiating his next deal. I think that's generally what that's about, is it is leverage. And yeah, he is like the uber professional. He has no off-field dramas. He's incredibly fit. He's still got the step that he had 10 years ago. He's been fantastic this season. I don't see why he couldn't play for another 5 years. I mean, there are other guys who have hung around on the wing playing till like 35, 36. It's not like he would be alone in that. And I think he loves the Warriors as well. And that's a big part of that.
I'm thinking about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck the same way I'm thinking about Kane Williamson. Because if Kane Williamson's just playing a bit of test cricket, he can travel the world, he can play other leagues, he can do whatever he wants, really, to be honest. He's Kane Williamson. Why would Kane Williamson retire from test cricket anytime soon? Like, he just scored back-to-back hundreds in the county championship, and I did have this nugget in the newsletter as well. Little cricketing detour. Test cricket. Kane Williamson, already a legend. Already the best batter New Zealand's ever seen before the pandemic. Averaging 51.4. Since the start of 2020, Kane Williamson is averaging 64.3. I mean, that's just test cricket, right? ODIs. Before 2020, he was averaging 47.9. Since the start of 2020, averaging 58. He has added 10 runs to both of those averages in the last 5 years. Why would he depart the test arena? ODIs, it's a bit different. Like this, he might just focus on the major tournaments, which could get a bit weird. But Kane Williamson and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck are doing, I don't want to say like the career best, because like Roger Vasicek's won a Dally M and Kane Williamson's probably had better seasons, but they are still really, really, really good. Statistically, there is a case to be made that they are better than they have ever been. Like, we don't need to shuffle those guys out, right? Like, we don't need to push those guys aside while they are so good. And I think, given what Kane Williamson has said, neither him or Roger Tuivasa-Sheck really wants to depart their favourite arenas or their home base. Someone who is part of the crew of youngsters who grew up in the same area as Tuivasa-Sheck is Ieremia-Toeava, and he was the 13th Kiwi-NRL debutant of 2025. So in this little couple of kilometre radius, Dimitri Vaimonga, Ieremia-Toeava, Leka Halasima, Ieremia-Toeava, and Kailis Fatialofa, who may be the next debutant, they all come from the same area. And obviously it's South Auckland, but it's also like a concentrated 5 kilometre radius of South Auckland. Now, obviously, there's a lot of rugby league talent coming out of that very small concentration, but this is just about the Warriors and Ieremia-Toeava making his debut. First of all, 2 questions. Just straight off the top of your head, how old do you think Ieremia-Toeava is?
Well, he's got to be part of that wave that you've been talking about with the New South Wales Cup team. We got a lot of players sort of like, I can't remember the exact, it was 22 and under or whatever it was. So I would guess 20, 21 years old.
He's 20 years old.
There you go.
And he will be 20 years old for the rest of the season because he turns 21 in December. Second question. 20-year-old Ieremia-Toeava. How many games of New South Wales Cup do you think he's played? He's played in 3 seasons. 2023, 2024, 2025. How many games do you think 20-year-old Ieremia-Toeava has played?
Well, I know he's missed a couple this year, having to be like 18th man duties, but is 50 too much for a bench? It's like 35.
43.
43, that's a lot.
So this dude, not only has he played a lot of New South Wales Cup footy, which was the same story for Tanner-Stowers-Smith, the other debutant this year for the Warriors, he's played a lot of 80-minute games. And he has started games, let alone what happens during the game, because he's a very versatile player who does cover a range of positions during a game. He has started games for the Warriors, who have been a top 4 team in New South Wales Cup for 3 years in a row, and he has been 18, 19, 20 years old in those 3 seasons. He's started at centre, he's started at prop, he's started at edge forward, and he's come off the bench as well. Now, of course, a lot of that screams like a really, 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 really good young rugby league player. But it's all Halasima hype. And this is the thing about the Warriors, is that these dudes are just coming through the grades. Next up is Kailis Fatialofa, who also went to De La Salle College, like Ieremia-Toeava, like Dimitri Vaimonga. But there's also this thing with the women's team as well. Did you hear about a player who debuted for the women's team in their win over the Cowboys?
Yes, if this is Ali Lauati's daughter, I did hear about that.
Hard not to hear about it. Cool story.
Yeah.
It's the type of story that journalists froth over. It's just like, the story writes itself. It literally does. Like, these are the angles that all the media are looking for in their coverage. And I mean, there's nothing negative to say about Ivana Lauatiti, who was awesome in her debut. Daughter of Ali Lauatiti. I think there's a couple sisters who are on the rise as well. There's Ieremia-Toeava, her cousin. There's Angelina Ieremia-Toeava, who is now, I think, Angelina Hunt, who has already played for the Kiwi Ferns. Right, like, this whānau is pretty good at sport. But there was another player making a debut for the Warriors in that game, Taira Wetere. 19 years old, same age as Lauatiti. Rangatawa from the Bay of Plenty. All preseason, when I was thinking about the women's squad, she was a fullback, a half. She makes her debut on the wing in horrible conditions. That's pretty cool. Both of them are older, a year older than Ashley Matapo, who is 18 years old. Northcote Junior, who she's played rugby and rugby league around Auckland. She's already played 4 games. And she was awesome against the Cowboys as well. 24 tackles at 100%, which isn't even that crazy because this season, the 18-year-old has made 59 tackles at 100%. Obviously, that's no missed tackles, but the NRL tackle efficiency includes ineffective tackles. So if you're tackling at 100%, you got no missed tackles and you got no ineffective tackles. And she's already like, now this is again, who cares about development contracts? Who cares about your top 24 for the women, top 30 for the men? Because you can play NRL, NRLW on whatever contract you want. You can play for the Blackcaps on whatever contract you want. Matapo and Lauatiti, they have development contracts. But actually, Matapo was already playing for the Warriors as a younger forward than Lauatiti. And also shout out to Peyton Takimawana, who is 21 years old. She's also from Mount Maunganui, Tauranga Bay of Plenty area. She's been excellent on the wing. So that team that had a real tough win against the Cowboys, 3 teenagers and a 21-year-old. Both of the wingers are youngsters from Bay of Plenty because Takimawana was on one wing, Taira Wetere was on the other wing. 2 of your middle forwards, 18 years old, 19 years old. Crazy stuff. One player who I have been thinking a bit about in relation to the Warriors' loss to the Dolphins, which was I can't even complain about it because it was literally the flip side of the Knights game. And this is life. This is mindfulness. This is sport. You got to take it. You just got to take it. You can't. It's just like sometimes you win.
No self-pity.
No self-pity. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. Well, what can you do? Maybe kick the ball on the last tackle a few times.
Yeah.
But the one player I'm thinking about is Aublix Tawha, Turanga Waiwai Jr. He played 62 minutes, career high because he made his debut earlier this season. Mainly, I think he was playing right edge. Because obviously Herbie Farnworth got injured, and you never want to celebrate the injury to a player, but
safe to try.
Yeah, can't have been alone and thinking, wow, Herbie Farnworth just did his hammy. Great news. Because he was the best player on the field for like 15 minutes that he played. He's been the Dolphins' best player. Let me rephrase that. He's the best Dolphins player ever. Old Herbie.
Yeah, well,
That dude is the man. And so his hamstring injury was great news for the Warriors. Still lost. But I think Tawha came on around then, and the right edge forward, Oren Keeley, I think he went to right centre, and Aublix Tawha went to right edge. But Aublix Tawha made the second most tackles for the Dolphins in 62 minutes. He made 45 tackles. And I kept seeing him pop up everywhere. So I think he was just like, he did what he does. This is the type of player Aublix Tawha is. Wait, what kind of player is Aublix Tawha? Because when he was playing for Waikato in 2019, he was a fullback. And before that, he was like a centre, wing, outsidey back type of player coming through the ranks. I think he actually started in the Raiders system coming out of Aotearoa. And then he's starting games at prop in Queensland Cup. And before this game, he started 3 games at prop in the NRL. So in 2019, Aublix Tawha was a fullback for Waikato. In 2025, he is a starting prop in the NRL. That's crazy. That is ridiculous. But that tells you a lot about the NRL these days, and it tells you a lot about what the Dolphins do well. Because Tawha summed up those final stages for the Warriors loss to the Dolphins to me, because he has done a job in the middle and in the forwards for the Dolphins just through sheer just fitness, mobility. You obviously got to deal with the physicality, the ruthless physicality of NRL footy. He can do that, but he is fit and he moves well. Slide back to the Knights game, and I was like, yeah, obviously when you're chasing Leka Halasima, everyone's going to be fizzed up, everyone's fast, everyone's active, everyone's vital. And after watching that try over and over again, I was like, the Warriors, they're finishing high. They're finishing fast. It was the opposite, obviously, against the Dolphins. The Dolphins were the fitter team. The Dolphins were fresher in those final moments, not just with how they moved the footy around for the final play, but the Warriors decided to turn the ball over twice, deep in Dolphins territory, basically on their try line. Both times, the Dolphins went 50 meters. At least 50 meters. They made it past halfway both times. So why did the Warriors do that? Well, that type of thing, you're backing your defense. You're like, let's just make it really hard for the other team to get out of their end of the field. And the result, the outcome, makes it seem weak, passive. Like, we're trying not to lose this game, so we're going to give you the ball on your try line. But there's nothing weak and passive about, we're going to smash you. Right? So if you're the Bulldogs without the footy defensively, or the Panthers defensively, there's nothing weak or passive about turning the ball over to the opposition and just destroying them and keeping them within 20 meters, 30 meters, right? So the outcome made it feel weak and passive, but I still think it's a try not to lose this game. But even then, you can win the game with your defense. So even then, it's not like I'm not full into that idea, but you can kick the ball. You're still allowed to kick the ball, right? But why don't you kick the ball? Oh, because you're scared about having a 7-tackle set. Well, you're scared. You're operating out of fear because you don't want to turn the ball over, coming off that 20-meter restart, 7 tackles, walk down the field. So it's not a play based on fear because you're confident in your defense, but it is kind of based on fear because you don't want to make a mistake. You can score a try. Like, you can win the game instead of trying not to lose the game. You can also have confidence in your kicking ability to not concede a 7-tackle set, right? Like, so it's very complicated for me. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. Ultimately, if you're doing that, you need to smash the opposition. The Warriors did it twice, and...
You're saying you need Mitchell Barnett and James Fisher-Harris in that situation?
I think you do, and part of the fitness, the freshness of the Dolphins was on display with how they won those tackles. You win one tackle, you get a quick play of the ball. Now you're rolling downfield. Dolphins are fast, they're skillful, they move the footy well. But the Warriors were tired, they were buggered. So they're not winning those tackles. So that is, to me, that's an insight into maybe they were just a bit tired after some, a tough period. But, I mean, they've had buys through that, so I don't really know why they'd be tired. But there are a lot of young players on the field as well. So if you do have Mitchell Barnett and Fisher-Harris, then it can work. But if you're got a more young players, then it's going to get a bit iffy. But that just kind of summed up the game because... yeah, it's cool to back your defense and to turn the ball over, but you need to follow it up. And I found it disheartening that both times they did that, the Dolphins just cruised downfield. They were lucky not to concede points the first time because Dolphins, they went at their best. There were a couple of penalties and whatnot, errors. But you're playing with fire. If you give the Dolphins another opportunity, things could get tricky. And the Warriors are trying to defend that last play, having been walked back twice already. So you think, okay, we're going to turn the ball over on your try line, but then we have to retreat 60, 70 meters, making tackles, and then try chase you on the final play. When all your players are faster than our players. You got players like Aublix Tawha, who is not a big bopper. He's a small forward. He's fit. He's mobile. He's skillful. And the Dolphins have more of those players. So, and of course it was at Mount Smart Stadium. So the Warriors do not have a home advantage. And again, I'll repeat this, because we're getting into top 4 zone. Like, it was already a factor before we enter the climax of the season. Because we're thinking, everyone just assumes the Warriors have a home advantage. But now we're getting into the crunch time of the season, and we're like, okay, the Warriors need to be top 4 to get a home final. Do they? Because they've lost to the Raiders, the Panthers, the Titans, and the Dolphins at Mount Smart Stadium. The Dolphins game had a smaller crowd, so it wasn't like top 4 biggest crowds and they all lose type of thing, but there's 2 factors in that. The Warriors have lost these games against teams that are in different zones of the ladder. Raiders are the best team, who got upset by your Dragons.
Well, they weren't the best team last week.
The Raiders are the best team. Panthers are 5th. Dolphins are chasing finals footy. And the Titans are down the bottom of the ladder. So the Warriors have lost at Mount Smart Stadium to teams that are in every section of the NRL ladder. They have also lost. I mean, Luke Metcalf played 2 of those games. James Fisher-Harris played 2 of those games. Wade Egan and Chanel Harris-Tavita have played 3 of those games. Funnily enough, Mitchell Barnett hasn't played any of those games. But you can't say the Warriors are losing at Mount Smart because they were missing a player, because they've already lost games with those players in the team. So this is what makes it very strange for the Warriors at Mount Smart Stadium. But now we're coming into the time where everyone's going to be talking about top four, but there is no clear home advantage for the Warriors at Mount Smart right now. And there's another cricket crossover, because I don't know when I set the marker, maybe 2023, 2022 or something, but the Blackcaps are 8-7 for tests in New Zealand. Sure, they have a winning record, but they've lost tests to Bangladesh, South Africa, England, Australia, and New Zealand. Shout out to England cricket for saving Test cricket and saving the world of cricket. We appreciate you and all the fantastic work you do. I despise you. But England, credit to them, I think they've won 3 out of 5 tests against New Zealand in New Zealand. There is no clear and obvious home advantage for the Blackcaps in Test cricket in New Zealand right now. The same way, there is no clear and obvious advantage for the Warriors at Mount Smart Stadium. I think they've lost 3 out of their last 4 games at Mount Smart, and I think they're 4-4 on the whole season at Mount Smart Stadium. And for away games, they're 6-3. Which brings us into the Bulldogs. But if you got any more Warriors thoughts on that Dolphins game, hit me up, because I do want to do a bit more previewy stuff with the Warriors coming into this Bulldogs game day.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like the injuries have caught up with them to some extent. It's nice to have a very strong, reserve grade side, although lost the winning streak on the weekend. Another big result for the Dragons system, although the NRLW team couldn't see it through. And also that was only a draw. It wasn't a loss for either team. But yeah, it's nice to be able to have these young dudes who can step up and who can do a job. And some of them have been among the team's very best players this year. Like that's been fantastic. But like, you might be able to cover. I mean, well, you know what? We're talking about this a little bit early in the season about James Fisher-Harris, where like if you compare his who was it you compare him to? Adam Fanua-Blake, where it's like you just go by stats. The other guy is clearly better. Like Adam Fanua-Blake gets more meters. He does, the production is higher, but James Fisher-Harris wins more. And there's clearly something that goes beyond that he brings to the table, where he can make others better around him. And you might be able to get someone who can come in and do in whatever position it happens to be. You might be able to get like, you can get 100 meters of 10 carries from your 20-year-old start, playing in their first or second season in the NRL. But you just like there's a leadership aspect that you just can't replace. If you don't have James Fisher-Harris or Mitchell Barnett on the field, and there's a few others that would apply to as well. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is probably one of them. At least he has been available throughout. But like if you don't have those guys, you can't match that. You might be able to match the numbers, you might be able to match the production, but you can't match the sort of intangibles, the mana that those guys carry. And there were aspects of that game where it felt like that caught up with the Warriors, and aspects of the last few home defeats where it's felt like that's been the case, where it's like just some of the decision making or some of the not quite owning the big moments that were there for them, and that can't really be summarized any better than the way that Dolphins game finished, where it's like you take the conservative option and because even if you throw the ball around, try to get a couple offloads there, you're still playing it fairly safe, and you might drop the ball. Well, a turnover in that case ends up exactly the same as just taking the tackle tamely without even trying anything, without rolling the dice, just kind of putting your cue in your rack. There is the risk that maybe like traumatic moment from earlier in the Dragon season was when Jaden Sewer, I think it was against the Tigers, goes in like over the line, about to score a try, drops the ball over the line, and because the ball doesn't go dead or anything like that, the Tigers pick it up, run 100 meters, and score at the other end. So it was like a 12-point swing, right on halftime as well. That was a bastard of a day. But like, yeah, there are controlled risks there. Like you don't have to put you have to park it completely. You don't necessarily like, okay, you don't want to risk the 7 tackle set, so don't put a don't put a bomb that's going to land in that area. Don't, you still try to grubber. You can still do, like, I don't know, cut the ball out the other way. Like, it's things where it's like, I don't know. It just felt like that game got a little bit beyond them. And I also wonder if maybe the fact that they're playing against 12 men at that point maybe gave them more confidence than they should have had to be able to hold that out. Because it kind of doesn't matter how many guys are in the line if they're just like move, if they're playing the ball quickly and they're only making 1 or 2 passes and they're just rolling downfield. It doesn't matter if there's an extra, like, your winger's not doing anything in that situation. You can get away with not having the extra dude. But yeah, it's just it feels like there's a few of those things where it's just gotten away from them a little bit. But that doesn't make you a bad team or anything like that. And their away record proves that they are capable of winning in tough conditions. And this is the thing we've talked about. It's like, you get to finals footy, if you do find yourself playing away from home, well, Warriors get massive away crowds. And those away crowds are awesome. Like they spur them on just as much as the home crowds do. So that's good to know, because I was looking at the thing and working it out. Like, the Warriors are still 4th, but they could be 7th this time next week. If I think it's the Panthers, the Broncos, and someone else all win, and the Warriors lose, like that might, well, because their points difference isn't very good. So that's where they might find themselves at that quickly. There could be a tumble, but I don't know. I don't see that as a well, no, we'll don't need to make judgments. We'll just see what happens. We'll see how that unfolds, because they are in a little bit of a precarious position in their season. But I don't know how they're tracking against. Did you say they got the Dogs next week?
Yeah, I will say the Warriors were also playing with 12 men at the end of the game there, because Leka Halasima was just lying down on the field.
That's right.
Yeah. The last few
minutes. Trying to get out of the way, trying to dig a hole.
The cynical, angry side of me is like, he had a major injury and no one decided to stop the play. The chill version of me was like, he had cramps and he couldn't move. And you can't stop the game for cramp. And he is well within his right as a 19-year-old playing 80 minutes in the NRL to have a few cramps. Like, I think that is understandable given the speed and intensity of NRL footy. Whatever. So, we come into this Bulldogs game. The Bulldogs Warriors NRL matchup is going to be interesting, because the Warriors are not the Tigers. Not in a, like, the Warriors are so much better than the Tigers type of way, but in the way that the Warriors do not have funky attack. The Warriors are not fast. The Warriors don't really offload that much. So all the things that the Tigers are good at, the things that the Tigers did well against the Warriors to score points, the things that the Tigers did well to defeat the Bulldogs, are not things the Warriors do well. The Warriors play generally a similar style as the Bulldogs, maybe with a little less defensive intensity. So I don't know how the Warriors, down a few troops maybe, just battling for survival as a top 8 team, which isn't that bad. I don't know how they're going to beat the Bulldogs at the Bulldogs game. So that's just something to watch out for, because the Tigers did defeat the Bulldogs, but the Tigers have a lot of passes. They're fast in various positions, or relatively to their positions. They had Dream Buller back in the team. Like Benji Marshall hasn't coached they were pretty good defensively, but he hasn't coached a elite defensive team. He has coached a funky, vibrant, attacking team. That's not what the Warriors are. So I don't know how they're going to match up against the Bulldogs playing a similar style as the Bulldogs. So in the NRL, the Warriors are 4th. Bulldogs are now 3rd. 2 wins between them, 4 points. In the NRLW, the Bulldogs are 6th. The Warriors are 10th. The Bulldogs have 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. The Warriors have 2 wins, 3 losses. The Bulldogs are also well stocked with Wahine from Aotearoa. So this is going to be a heavyweight Aotearoa matchup between 2 teams entering the one entering, one returning to the competition this year. New South Wales Cup. The Warriors are 1st. I mean, shout out to your Dragons. You got a 14-all draw, but you're still 4 wins behind the Warriors, and you're 7 points behind the Warriors. The Bulldogs New South Wales Cup team is 8th. They have 8 wins, 10 losses, 2 draws, and they're 19 points behind the Warriors. But it goes deeper because we got Jersey Flegg Cup as well. So the Warriors are playing the Bulldogs in Sydney at Belmore. I think the other games are at the bigger stadium, maybe. Let me see where the New South Wales Cup is. New South Wales Cup is at the bigger stadium. Jersey Flegg under 21s, the Bulldogs are 6th. 10 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. Warriors are 9th, 8 wins, 10 losses, 2 draws. So they're 2 wins behind them. So it's like NRL, you got 2 top 4 teams going at it. Funky matchup. The Warriors are fighting to I think they're fighting for some pride right now, because if the Warriors win this game with all their injuries, then we're like, holy shit. This, it's another reinforcement of the Warriors system. NRLW, they're both kind of mid-table, 2-win teams, but you got a heavy-duty Aotearoa flavour. New South Wales Cup, Warriors are the most dominant team, Bulldogs are middle of the table, but it's in Sydney. What can the New South Wales Cup Warriors do? Can they just give the Bulldogs a bit of a humbling? But in Jersey Flegg, the Bulldogs are slightly ahead of the Warriors. And that's another interesting thing about this matchup is in Australia, the Bulldogs system, there's a lot of hype around it, the talent they have. A lot of the Australians don't talk about the fact that the Bulldogs men and women recruit a lot of players from Aotearoa. They are one of the most active recruitment teams from Aotearoa. And in New South Wales Cup, the Warriors are far better. The Bulldogs are slightly better at the under-21 level. So let me just say it's 2 very good systems, not playing system for the NRL teams, but club development systems doing battle across 4 grades in Sydney. This is going to be like, I think I've been overusing the massive weekend for the Warriors type of angle. This is going to be a massive weekend for the Warriors. Even more massive. Massiver. The massiveness. Warriors massive. Bulldogs massive. It's a big thing. More so than the other weeks because it's across 4 grades. This is one of the rare game days or even just like weekends where you've got 4 grades playing against each other. It's going to be awesome, and it's going to be very informative for each of those grades. We're going to learn a lot about each grade, for the Warriors especially, what happens this Saturday in Australia, Sydney, to be precise.
Yeah, well, I guess I guess they can all be massive. Like you just if they just can like week after week get a little bit more massiver, as you say. Um, that can still be true. You know, if they get a little bit more massive with each subsequent thing, then there's no fault in that. And it kind of does feel like that's true. Like, it does feel like there's a little bit of a snowballing effect, I guess, with the Warriors, where they're this happens normally anyway because you get towards the finals of towards the end of the season, like the ramifications get a little bit higher, and you get fewer opportunities to make up for a bad day. Like you can't just go and win the next 10 games in a row because there aren't 10 games left. You can't make up for that, but um, that does still feel pretty accurate, and I that doesn't happen very often, does it? Where you get like the full alignment with like two teams just across these grades. So, and the Bulldogs are a team that, for various reasons, have probably popped up more than most in terms of like Australian clubs that we have monitored on this podcast. So that puts it into some nice perspective. That's a fun weekend.
Hard and fast off the top of my head, we got Seraldo and Webster, former Panthers
Yep.
assistant coaches, playing quite similar styles of footy. We've got Bulldogs women competing with the Warriors for female rugby league talent from Aotearoa. We've got the Bulldogs men system doing the same. Obviously, we got the Canterbury Rugby League situation where the Bulldogs signed that deal with Canterbury Rugby League. Warriors, what happened there? Well, they just keep getting players from Canterbury, right? Like some of the best Warriors juniors, Bishop Neal, Jason Salalilo, Ieremia-Toeava, Tanner Stella-Smith, all from Christchurch. And the Bulldogs, they've got their own. Bronson Rubin from Kaiapoi, very talented half. You've got Sasai Alatini from Christchurch, Hornby Jr., very talented edge forward. You've got Alekolasimi Jones, good forward. Cassius Tia, playmaker in the Bulldogs system. And you've also got Carwyn Patterson, who played for the first under-17 Harold Matthews Cup Championship and then went to the Bulldogs. Now he is playing under-21s while still being under-19 eligible. Let's swing over to Zimbabwe, where the Blackcaps had a win in the first test. Pretty good stuff. Devon Conway scored runs. Daryl Mitchell scored runs. Will Young scored a few runs. And we had Matt Henry taking a lot of wickets. Nathan Smith took a few wickets. Will O'Rourke took a few wickets. And Mitchell Santner took wickets as well. Some squad news. Zach Foulkes has come into the squad for Nathan Smith, which is a nice little salute to Zach Foulkes as a future test all-rounder. And Ben Lister has come into the squad as cover for Will O'Rourke. So we don't know. There's a whole lot of like team combinations that could happen for the second test, especially if Tom Latham is fit and firing. I don't think Zach Foulkes or Ben Lister will be selected in the first 11 ahead of Jacob Duffy or Matt Fisher. But there's a few different combinations they could use there. Ajaz Patel's probably deserving of a crack at some point as well. But just generally speaking, reflecting on the first test and maybe some stuff you're interested about the coming into the second test as well.
Yeah, Matt Henry's pretty good. I don't think we learnt that, but he continues to be very good. Only thing with that is I was surprised when he was when he ripped through the top order to get things going a little, well, him and O'Rourke in the second innings. And I didn't realize he doesn't actually have a tenfer in Test cricket, which, I mean, that's an incredibly difficult achievement to do. Many legendary bowlers don't, or only have one or two in their careers. Um, but he's got to nine a couple times, and here was an opportunity when there was like 5 wickets left or something like that with him on nine, and he didn't get any more of them. Well, with two of the other bowlers out injured as well. So at that point, so they weren't going to threaten him. But no, Mitchell Santner cleaned up the tail, doing some very nice Mitchell Santner things, which was great from him. But also, I think it was surprising maybe from that Test match. I don't know how you felt about it, but how like it seemed to be quite seam friendly above anything else. Like I think that balance was a little bit more towards the pace balls than it was towards the spinners, which maybe wasn't the expected thing. And that was true as well when Zimbabwe were bowling, same as when we were bowling, because their pace bowls actually um, they didn't they struggled to put it together consistently, but there were spells in there which were really challenging. Like the start of because the start of New Zealand's innings, they got to like 90 without loss, batting late on day one, and then day two they come back. Will Young's out first ball, and then everyone other than Daryl Mitchell and a bit of Devon Conway. Conway got a lot of his runs the night before when batting was a bit easier, but no one really seemed to be able to stick around and go very deep. As I said, apart from Daryl Mitchell, who had a very nice innings from him, like really important one to kind of string everything together there as wickets fell around him. So it's probably a trickier one for the batters than maybe might have been anticipated, but the Kiwi seam bowlers were excellent and everyone had their little moments. We even saw some Daryl Mitchell overs with the ball, which didn't get to improve his average or anything like that, but he got to roll the arm over a little bit, which is nice for him. I'm not sure how they do the second test lineup though. Like, first of all, I'm surprised they needed to call up two extra bowlers where like you have two other seam bowlers who weren't in the lineup. I get the Folks one more so because that's a slightly different position where it's a bit more of a all-rounder spot, and I guess we already know that Michael Bracewell isn't going to play the second test because he's got to go back to England, and Glenn Phillips would be well, Bracewell was the replacement for Phillips, so obviously Phillips would come back in for Bracewell if he's fit, but that's not a guarantee. And yeah, you mentioned Tom Latham also battling against battling to be fit on time. The game is on Thursday night New Zealand time, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. They did finish the test 2 days early, so that helps with the recovery. But it is like it doesn't make a difference for Phillips or Latham in their situations. They're both just, regardless of how long the first test went, they're just trying to be fit for the second one.
Phillips is not there.
Who? Phillips is not there. Is he not there at all? And didn't they say he was a chance for the second, or has that been updated and he's not?
I think he just got ruled out for the whole tour.
Oh, okay.
T20s and test, I think.
Well, definitely T20s because those have been.
Yeah, Glenn Phillips ruled out of Zimbabwe tour.
Okay. I thought they said there was going to be a chance for the second one. So I guess that's not the case then, which I don't know if you need that extra spinning around it anyway. I mean,
well, to me, given what we saw with the T20 Tri-Series, 17, I think, players used for
something
5 games of cricket. I think this is another example of Rob Walter just getting the lads in, just bringing them in, getting them involved. Because Ben Lister and Zach Folks, highly unlikely to play. And when you think about them in the seam bowling depth chart, I mean, Ben Sears is unavailable, Kyle Jamison's unavailable. Like, these dudes are, and it's the same, to me, it's the same with Matt Fisher. Like, I think Rob Walter just wants to get them in, get them involved, give them a taste of the Blackcaps environment, which has always been the case. Well, not always, but like in well-run Blackcaps teams of the last 10 years, that's usually been the case. But I think it's extra the case with Rob Walter as a new coach, just getting those dudes into the environment, into a test structure, because he's worked. Ben Lister here, no, he's definitely not been a part of the Blackcaps while Rob Walter's been coach, and he might have been on that New Zealand A tour that Fisher was on in India, where Rob Walter was the coach of that team back in 2022, I think, off the top of my head. But as long as New Zealand cricket can afford to have these players in Zimbabwe, like extra hotel rooms, extra food, and that type of stuff, to me, it's just building out the squad, development of these players, not development in terms of game time, but a development in terms of having the players in the group and around the test squad and what it takes to play test cricket and that type of stuff.
And Ben Lister is the next up left-hander, right? Like, are there other seam bowling left-armers who are even sort of in that, who could have been called up at this stage? There's a few good young guys around the domestic scene, but not really into a test squad quite ready levels yet, right?
Oh, Neil Wagner.
Oh yeah. Whatever happened to him?
Well, he's playing county cricket, so he's hanging on. There's Lister's the next best, but he's not like, again, say it before, say it again, he is not a lefty swing bowler like Trent Boult. Ben Lister is a quirky lefty with the angles and the seam movement he gets, but he's the next best lefty, and he's been really good in T20 cricket. Like, he gets T20 gigs around the world as well. As far as domestic lefties, Auckland has Matt Gibson. CD has Ray Toole. Ed Nuttall's still going around for Canterbury. Otago has Andrew Hazeldine, who's a hectic lefty. And then I'm not sure if you remember Shane O'Connor. He was a lefty, played for the Blackcaps coming out of Otago. His son, Tom Thomas O'Connor, debuted for Otago last summer as well. So there's plenty of lefties coming through. None of them are pushing for Blackcaps selection in the same way that Ben Lister is. And this is the beauty of Blackcaps right now, the seam bowlers. Like Nathan Smith and Zach Folks, they overlap, they interchange between the formats, but they're very good seaming all-rounders. You've got the freaky tall dudes, Kyle Jamieson, Will O'Rourke. I thought there was another one. Henry Shipley, but he's been off the radar a wee bit. You are Ben Sears, crazy. Matt Fisher, crazy. Then you got the seamers like Matt Henry. There's got to be another one struggling off the top of my head, but these dudes are all Jacob Duffy. There you go. It's like, well, Jacob Duffy's one of the best T20 bowlers in the world. He's taken his opportunities in those formats, and all these guys have played international cricket already. And there's a lot more coming through the system. I wrote this in the newsletter yesterday, just with regards to the all-rounder, like just specifically all-rounders. Jock McKenzie for Auckland. He's awesome. Christian Clark was very impressive on the A tour just gone. Will Clark for CD is pretty good with band ball. Cameron Paul is the next up Canterbury seam all-rounder. Luke Georgeson's one of my favourite cricketers in Aotearoa. No one from Wellington there, but they got Nathan Smith. And then they also have Jesse Tashkoff, who is a spin all-rounder.
Does Mohamed Abbas have that kind of forecast?
Yes, he does, actually. I think correct. The only notes I have is like I don't know about his workload, because his workload for Wellington as a seamer was pretty low ahead of his Blackcaps debut, and then it got really heavy in the Blackcaps. And I don't know if he bowled a lot on the A tour of Bangladesh, but he's definitely in that mix, so I left him out. So that's a good spot from you there. So there's a seaming all-rounder in every domestic team. Some of them have two. Nathan Smith, Mohamed Abbas, Zach Folks, Cameron Paul. Cameron Paul's the youngest. He's only 20 years old, but he's looked very impressive so far in domestic cricket. But also shout out to Jesse Tashkoff. He was a sneaky, really impressive all-rounder for Wellington last summer. So it's like, okay, but just think about the new seamers is maybe a better way. Jacob Duffy's commanded opportunities in game time. Zach Fox, Nathan Smith, Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, Matt Fisher, and we got Ben Lister loitering as well. It's just really impressive. So it'll be, to your point about conditions, I think just good cricket wicket, you know, like a bit of seam, bit of spin. Aside from wanting to see Matt Henry continue being awesome, there is a good opportunity to get Jacob Duffy and Fisher involved, depending on what you want to do with Ajaz Patel, because you can still select Santner and Patel in the same team, even though they are both lefties, because Mitchell Santner is pretty good at batting. So there's a lot of combinations. But how about this? Like I mentioned Kane Williamson's record, how it's a lot better, not a lot better, but how it's got better recently. Matt Henry and Mitchell Santner. I've used this a lot for Matt Henry before 2020, since the start of 2020. Both of them are, let's say, they're over a certain figure before 2020, and they are under a certain figure after 2020, since the start of 2020. I'll say before 2020, they're over a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a 10 figure. Like something that ends in a 0. Since the start of 2020, they are under a 5 figure. What are your guesses for those numbers? What they average before and since the start of 2020? Because they're in the same zone for both of them.
Over 50 and now under 25.
Bit rough.
Over 40 and
yeah,
under
they're
25.
only over 40. Like they're not terrible.
Well, this
Matt Henry 48.4, Santner 44.7. So they're both over 40. Now they're both below 25. Henry is 22.9, Santner 21.9. And when you're thinking, okay, it might not be super spinny conditions, but Santner still look good. Still got the flight, still got the accuracy, still got the spin, and he was just way more effective than Michael Bracewell.
Way more effective, yes.
So this gets into like who needs to do something. I don't think we're going to see Michael Bracewell play many more tests. Let's check in with his test stats since the start of 2024. Well, he's only played the one test, so he's a waste of time. But he, let's go career then. Let's see what big dog Michael Bracewell, who I think is like a first 11 T20 player, on the fringe of the ODI team. Test batting average 19, test bowling average 44. Both of those are worse than Mitchell Santner. I don't think he's
probably
playing...
similar to Mitchell Santner pre-2020.
Correct.
Difference is he doesn't have the years left in his career to make up for that.
Well, the difference is he hasn't got better since. Like all of that is in the period where
started
Santner...
that process. Yeah.
So I don't think Michael Bracewell's a test factor anymore. Like it's just straight up. Like he's only there because Glenn Phillips isn't there, and he didn't take his opportunity in one test. The only other dude who I'm really putting on that, not pedestal, but this is a bit vulgar, but the old the moon cell, like the Game of Thrones in the Vale, where they're like in the cell, but the cell, like the prison cell, jail cell type of thing, but it's just like there's no door, it just falls out into the sky, and so you're...
That's right. Yeah, I recall.
You're trapped in the...
You can look up at the moon.
And there's an angle, it like angles out to the sky. So like if you go to sleep, you might just roll off.
Or like Lord of the Rings, where Saruman chucked Gandalf on top of the tower. It's like there's no door, there's no way off. You can just look. Great view, but there's nowhere to go unless you can talk to eagles.
I think Tommy Blundell's in that. Because he didn't take his opportunity. He only batted once against Zimbabwe. But he's 13 tests since the start of 2024, and he's averaging 22. And he didn't look great in his brief innings against Zimbabwe. Like, Rachin Ravindra didn't score runs against Zimbabwe, but we know he's good. Tom Blundell didn't score runs against Zimbabwe, and he's been trending in this direction for a while now, and I think he's in a danger zone. I think Michael Bracewell's already gone. And Devon Conway, he scored runs in this test, right? What do you think his average is now since the start of 2024?
22.
23.9. Good guess. Okay. You're on
yeah,
form.
Well, it went up. It might have been 22 before he scored 88. Threw away 100 though.
Meanwhile, Santner's averaging 28 with the bat. So he's averaging more than Blundell, more than Conway, just less than Tom Latham. No, actually more than Tom Latham, averaging 26.3. So Conway, he got his score, right? And given what he's done previously, he has extended his faith in the 7 or the old gods. Blundell's in an iffy territory. I can't think of any bowlers. Like, because the cool thing was Henry did what he always does at the moment. But Nathan Smith took wickets. Will O'Rourke took wickets. So that was very useful for them. The only bowler who struggled was Bracewell. And I don't really, like, when I say Bracewell's kind of out of the test mix, I don't have him in my top 15 test players for New Zealand right now. So that's like spinners. He's behind Santner, he's behind Phillips, he's behind Ajaz Patel. And very soon, Adi Ashok is going to come into that equation. I think that is the main talking point. Blundell, Bracewell, he's off. He's doing some other stuff. That's all good. Don't need to worry about him. I think Blundell is the main dude right now who I'm a little bit worried about. Will Young wasn't like dominant, but he got a 40-odd, which is what he usually does. And he is still averaging 40 since the start of 2024. He was opening, which is not his favoured position. And if Latham comes back into the team, then we might see Will Young go to number 3, where he is averaging 47. For some reason, he batted first in this in the first innings.
As in, faced the first ball? Faced
the first ball. And that was the first time he has faced the first ball in his test career, apparently.
Well, he's probably always opened with Latham, right? And Latham always likes to face the first ball, so...
But then in the second innings, Devon Conway faced the first ball.
Yeah, interesting.
All of which means...
when Will Young got his match-winning 0 not out in the run chase.
If Will Young is batting in an odd position, odd number, he averages over 40. If he's batting in an even position, an even number, he averages less than 30. There you go.
So if Latham, who I think that was I'm realizing Will Young must have only ever opened with Latham because that was the first test Latham's ever missed since his debut. He had an incredible run of like 88 test matches, I think, in a row, with like playing every single one of them since his first test. The only Blackcap who's had a longer run was Brendan McCullum, who played like 102 test matches, never missed one. So, and Latham always opens, so Young would have only opened with Latham. If Latham's fit for the second test, obviously he opens. He comes in and he's the captain of the test team, and he faces the first delivery. But I'd imagine then you'd lean towards Conway staying as the other opener and Young at 3. Then is that what you're saying? Nichols, sorry, bro. Like, sorry, Henry.
I
He
mean,
just such a Henry Nichols innings in that one, where it's like he looked terrible to start off with. He looked awful. Fought through the difficult patch, started getting like flowing runs, and he was hitting boundaries, and then he just like tried to repeat the dose and picked out a fielder with a really soft dismissal after he'd gotten through the tough stuff, after he'd gotten a nice start. It's just a very Henry Nichols experience.
yes, my best team, let's just go with that for a second, for the first test is Latham, Conway, Young, Ravindra, Mitchell, Blundell. That's 6. So then we need Mitchell, Santner, 7. And, well, this is the thing. Top 6, that's my best top 6 because I don't want my best bowling attack in the second test. I might just go Patel, Santner, Duffy, Fisher, and maybe just keep Henry. It's just like we need to boost his stats even more. So we got 6 with Blundell, Santner, Patel, Duffy, Fisher, Henry. 5. There's your 11 right there. But my best batting lineup, no surprises, does not include Henry Nichols. But I mean, Henry Nichols has got 3,000 test runs. You had this note in the newsletter yesterday, the Monday newsletter, that Henry Nichols, 3rd highest run scorer for active Blackcaps in Test cricket. The only other
11th all time.
He's doing legendary shit. So shout out to Henry Nichols. However, Henry Nichols in tests outside New Zealand since the start of 2020, he's averaging 17 with a strike rate of 40. So these are the Mitchell and Williamson are averaging over 40. This is all since the start of 2020 overseas. Phillips, Conway, Ravindra, Will Young, Tom Latham are all averaging 30 or higher. Bracewell and Santner are averaging over 20. Then you got Henry Nichols averaging 17. He got a 30 odd. Not the worst thing that could happen for Henry Nichols. Not the best thing either. And he was only batting number 3 because Tom Latham wasn't playing, Kane Williamson isn't playing. So it's not like he was thrown in as a certified first 11 member.
Yeah, he hasn't jumped the queue or anything. It's just they had to reach a little bit lower.
Yeah. I think, we were already pondering which young batter would get an opportunity for this tour. And then Henry Nichols was selected. I think the easiest thing they can do for the second test, unless they are super duper on board with Henry Nichols. Maybe Rob Walter just loves Henry Nichols. The best thing they can do, Tom Latham, Devon Conway, Will Young, Rachin Ravindra, Daryl Mitchell. And then you're still going to have a situation where Kane Williamson comes back. Maybe he plays for the next 10 years like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. In that case, Will Young is your next best batter. Because, I prefer Will Young over Devon Conway, but Devon Conway's just doing enough to hold his spot. So in that top 5...
Either way, it's one of those two. So,
yeah. In that top 5, you got one of those two who is next best outside the first 11. And then I think after that, we are going to be in a stage where it's Reece Madu, Muhammad Abbas, and the youngsters start to get those opportunities. Right now, it's the top 5, and Henry Nicholls is there. I think we probably should have already gone towards the youngsters, but I think we're not far off if, especially if he doesn't play the second test, right? If he plays the second test and he scores a century, well, fantastic, good for him, and we'll have to reassess. But we'll wait and see.
Well, he actually scored 200 not out a couple innings ago. So, as far as his test career goes, he's been dropped in between, so it's more than a few tests. I mean, the same thing was true with Tom Blundell, though, where he scored 100 against England in the most recent test matches that New Zealand played. But in this game, sort of looked more like the guy we saw before that, where we had an extended run of not scoring a lot of runs. So it's like you can get the one nice score is cool to take a bit of the pressure off, but then if you just go back to not scoring runs afterwards, it doesn't, you're only extending the demise. Nice for Henry Nicholls to be able to tick off a milestone, though. You don't want to be stuck at the end of your career with like 2,970 odd runs. So you at least get to the 3K. But I don't know how often that situation is going to come around again, or how soon it's going to come around again, where you're 2 batters in the top 5 down, for someone like Nicholls to then be boosted up. By the time it does, we might well be halfway through another Plunket Shield season where, someone like Reece Muddy or whoever has scored a bunch more runs, and it becomes a little bit more like, well, at some point this order has to change, kind of thing. At some point we have to check the next one, because we have incorporated a bunch of young bowlers into the side. Haven't really done it with the batters outside of Rachin Ravindra, who feels like a special case. So that process will probably happen, and it'll happen naturally, it'll happen organically, and don't think Henry Nicholls is going to benefit from that.
Just to wrap up, so we got 2 test wins in a row. That's pretty good. And we got 4 test wins in a row overseas. So that's all right as well. As we know, no clear home advantage for the Blackcaps in Aotearoa, but they are disgustingly dominant overseas, defeating India and Zimbabwe. Let's finish with a bit of football. Slide back into that Wellington Phoenix woman conversation we started with. And I don't know what we're going to start with. We have we do have a lot of signings that have been made without Bev Priestman. You touched on this as well, but is there a clear style? Is there a clear strategy of their recruitment? Not the style of play, but the players they have brought in. Well, we got Vic Essen as well, so that's pretty cool. Vic Essen, CJ Bott, Ali Walker, Tessel Madag, and Lucia Leon, Sabitra Bandari. She's the Nepalese one, right?
That's the one.
Bang.
Yeah, Nepal's all-time leading scorer. She's on board.
Wait, so did the Spanish-Portuguese goalie, is she gone?
She is gone, Carolina Vial. She's been replaced by Vic Essen, which
Right.
I guess frees up a import spot somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, there's those signings. I think you can see, particularly with CJ Bott. I think Tessel Madag is quite a sort of midfielder who can play a little bit of centre back, but I expect to be a midfielder. She's a Dutch international, so I don't know if she's like a. I have seen her play because she was teammates with Vic Essen and at Rangers for the last couple of years, but I mean, I'm not trying to get scouting reports on every player who plays alongside a New Zealander, so I can't say too much about that. But I expect she's physical enough. Lucia Leon seems to be someone who, she did play for Western Sydney last year. She seems to be someone who is quite quick and fairly dynamic. So and Ellie Walker is, as an American centre back, you can expect her to be very physical. She's also tall, which I think is a pretty helpful thing. for the Phoenix in particular, because even when they've had tall players, it's one thing to be tall, it's another thing to be like good at winning all your headers and making those clearances and stuff. And I think that's something where they've been lacking just a little bit in the last couple of years. Well, they're lacking a little bit for the whole way through, with the exception of, I think, when Marissa Vandermeer was fit, she was very good, even though she's not really, wouldn't say she's one of the tallest defenders they've had, but she's very good at getting up and winning them headers. She is making a comeback after consecutive ACL injuries. She played 60 odd minutes for Western Springs on the weekend. She's played a couple games back for Western Springs, so she is on the pathway back. And she was promised a spot with the Phoenix. They did say, well, Paul Temple said last year when they took her contract away because she tore her ACL during the recovery from having torn her ACL. She did it again, and they're like, well, we can't, season-ending injury before the season's even started. We kind of need to use that spot on someone else, but we will promise you a spot to come back when you get fit and prove yourself. We'll have you back again. Whether that promise still stands under Bev Priestman instead of Paul Temple might be a different story. So I don't think we can guarantee that.
That's a political type of thing, right? Like my political friend promised me something, and then they were ousted. My friend is the manager, and they promised me something, then they got fired. You never know if those promises or those deals that you make are going to be there. Obviously, if we keep the Game of Thrones references, my friend is the king, he's the lord, and then he got killed. Where's my promise at? Like those situations are always a bit murky.
Yeah, he said I could be Master at Arms, but now he's dead. So can I still be Master at Arms? Is that all right? Yeah, no, probably not going to happen. But we'll see, because she's good enough to play A-League when fit. She's played 30 odd games in the A-League football before. But yes, that's not we can't take the fact that she was promised it before as a guarantee that it'll happen again. Rebecca Lake is the only other player from last year's squad who hasn't been like farewelled, you're not coming back kind of thing, but good luck for what's coming, or signed somewhere else. She's the only player who's sort of like left out. She started last season as a first choice centre back, but then injured her foot and missed the rest of the year. She's also on the comeback trail playing for Kashmir Technical at the moment, where among her teammates, Lara Wall, who is contracted for the Phoenix, she's playing some, in between season stuff for Kashmir Tech, and Anali Longo, who is retired from professional football, but for some reason people don't believe it. Like I keep seeing in all these press conferences, they're like Michael Main's being asked about it, Bev Priestman's being asked about it. And she did go on their most recent Football Ferns tour. I think that was maybe a bit of like, we don't have any other experienced players except for Rebecca Stott was back by that time. So we can keep you on. You're in good form, and you haven't lost it just because you've retired from the end of the Phoenix season. This is a month later. Why not? But I think when a player says that they're retired and that this is it for their thing, you got to wait until they say, on second thoughts, I've decided I'm playing well enough and I'm excited about this Phoenix project and I'd like to come back. You kind of got to wait till they say that before you start making those assumptions, rather than asking them, so you're going to sign that player who's retired? It's like, well, I'd love to have Annalie Longo. I thought she played very well last season. This is what Bev Priestman was saying. But that's up to her, It's not anyone else's decision to make.
Is this a situation where the journalists in the press conferences asked Priestman about it, or asked the boss man of the Phoenix about it? It's not like these people are saying off the cuff from their own like yarns. They're saying, yeah, we're also curious about Annalie Longo and her status. It's not front of mind for them until a journalist asks them about Longo's availability, which is a bit weird considering she is retired. Like, we're going to ask you about a player who has retired when the people involved, the coach, the CEO, whoever, they haven't said anything. So either they are, making a deal with the journalist, like, you need to ask me about Annalie Longo so we can bring it up, Or it's just one of those things that the media conjure up, like, hey, when are you going to play Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback? It's like, well, but now there is a quote from Andrew Webster about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but it's not like that is top of his mind. He just answered a question. I think that might be the same case for the Phoenix and Annalie Longo, who, I mean, they gave her a send-off, right? They celebrated her career. She seems pretty content in retiring. Is that a correct read from in your perspective?
Yeah, subbed her off with a few minutes left in the last game. She was, players were rushing over and hugging her as she was walking off. She did an interview afterwards where she was very emotional talking about it, and she's not a person who gets very emotional ordinarily. Like, it's clearly meant a lot to her, and I didn't get the feeling that was an off the cuff decision. She's been a little bit in and out of professional football anyway. She's never played outside the A-League, and she's sort of had a few years there, then back to Christchurch, a few years there, and back to playing a bit more for Cashy Tech. So she's coming off maybe definitely one of the best seasons of her career. Maybe that's a Roger Tuivasa-Sheck comparison as well. But and there's no doubt that she could continue, and she would actually be a really effective player for this team. But I also like. And in fact, I'll go even further and say, to be honest, I haven't ruled it out myself either. I think she might well get the itch and want to keep playing. I just think it's a little bit weird to be asking about it until she makes the step of saying, like, no, I said I was retired. Maybe I'll unretire, maybe I won't, but like, it's not. I don't know. It just seems a little bit discourteous to be asking about it,
And it's football. It's not boxing.
Yeah, where Tyson Fury can retire 5 times per. He retires after every fight. He's coming out of retirement again, apparently, later this year.
We had the Wellington Phoenix doing well in the Aussie Cup, and we've also got Auckland FC, the Blue Riders, in the Aussie Cup as well. Was it a similar story as the Phoenix, with a lot of younger players getting opportunity and doing the job? Or was there a different twist to it? And I'd also highlight that Tommy Smithwood and I has signed a deal somewhere in England, so he's still playing football. Shout out to him, pushing for that All Whites World Cup spot. So he needs unlike CJ Bott, maybe he doesn't need to be playing football for an All Whites call-up. Obviously, CJ Bott, she needs to be playing football for a Football Ferns call-up, because she has dipped out of the Football Ferns in the Gucci Mane era. Tommy Smithwood and I, no worries for him. He's already there. Doesn't matter what level of football he's playing. He's going to be in the All Whites World Cup squad, so shout out to him. But what did you make of the Auckland FC? I'm assuming they had a win.
Yeah, they did. And while we're talking about, while we're having a slight little whinge about Annalie Longo questions being asked in press conferences, I did appreciate very much, on the flip side, someone actually asking CJ Bott about her Football Fern situation, which she didn't address anything about the reasons why she wasn't picked earlier in the year. Still think there's likely to have been some sort of like upper level shenanigans there, maybe a little slap on the wrist in terms of how the previous coach left. But I also think, well, that's done and dusted, so we can move forward. And the important thing is CJ Bott did she wasn't in the most recent squad, but she was injured for that. Same with Katie Bowen was injured with that, but Rebecca Stott was recalled, and they were the 3 sort of glaring omissions from the first couple of main squads. So that's, I think, hopefully that's in the rearview mirror. And she very firmly reiterated that she intends to play at the next World Cup as long as she's picked. She's fully committed to playing for New Zealand. So that's all good stuff. As is Tommy Smith, because I watched his interview with Braintree Town when they unveiled him. It's a lot of international football talk for a 5th-tier English team. So he might be the only player in that competition who gets to go to the World Cup. It's kind of crazy, but there was a nice little link there, because Braintree Town is an Essex team, and he previously played for Ipswich, 250 odd times for Ipswich. He's a bit of a sort of modern legend for them. And also for Colchester, which is another team in the same area. And Colchester and Braintree Town are 2 teams that Ipswich loan a lot of their young players to. You're still you're still local for the parent club, but you can go and play some senior football over there. It's quite a nice little arrangement. So Smithy himself did that for Colchester early in his career, was a lone player there. And then more recently, after he'd played MLS, he came back and played for Colchester on a permanent deal a couple of years ago. And last season, Henry Gray, New Zealand under-23s goalkeeper, who is on the books for Ipswich Town, he went on loan to Braintree Town and only played half a year there as a young goalkeeper, but won their Young Player of the Year awards. So they did very well with bringing in a New Zealander in last year. They're bringing in a New Zealander this year and seeing at the other end of the career spectrum. But Tommy Smith should, he's got plenty of great attributes. He'll do pretty well at that level. And yes, it's not going to make a difference what level he plays at, whether he gets picked in the All-White squad for the World Cup or not, because he's going to be picked in the All-White squad for the World Cup. And that might be the last time we see him in an All-White jersey. I don't know if he'll even get on in the minutes, but he's certainly an important part of that team culture. So good stuff from him. And I never for a second thought he would retire after leaving Auckland FC. Always figured he'd end up somewhere. And that's probably quite a nice little landing spot for him, where he'll be able to balance like playing some decent minutes, but also, you know, not too low a level, but also at a level where it's low enough that he's going to get to be a fairly regular starter, which, to be fair, he wasn't often for Auckland FC either. Speaking of Auckland FC, who'd they play? It was Gold Coast Knights in the Aussie Cup. Let me just check the exact thing, but it was not what we saw from the Wellington Phoenix. It was in a couple of different ways, because they didn't pick the youngsters. They picked just the team they've been picking throughout the thing. It's just the sort of, you know, there's a couple of players who have left, so a couple other players step up, haven't got a replacement striker yet, so Jesse Randall gets to start, that kind of thing. But like, you know, so Michael Vowd gets to start in goal. That's his debut for the team. He was with the team the entire time. One of their first signings. Never got to play last year. Finally gets to play in this game. But defensively, Sakai, Hall, Peinecker, De Vries, first choice. Howison and Gallegos in midfield. So Howison was starting ahead of Jake Brim, who came off the bench. Francois and Rogerson on the wings. Guillermo Mai and Jesse Randall up front. That's pretty similar to, they probably even picked that exact 11 for an A-League game last season. You know, there's nothing rotational about that, other than Michael Vowd, obviously. But we expect him to be their number one goalkeeper this year. We did see a little bit off the bench, because obviously they haven't made all their signings yet, so that allows other guys to step up into some of those slots. So Liam Gillian came off the bench and scored a really nice goal. He's been pretty good in preseason for them so far, by the sounds of it, and he was awesome for preseason for them in preseason last year as well. So this is his time to shine. Apparently, it's when the games don't count. But hopefully, he's able to push that into you know, getting a few more goals and assists in the A-League stuff, because he was winning his position back towards the end of last season. But Finn McKinlay got some minutes off the bench, and Oliver Middleton as well. That's his first appearance for the team. So there's you know, two debutants in there. But yeah, Jesse Randall scored inside of the first minute. Logan Rogerson scored, Guillermo Mai scored, and I mentioned Liam Gillian scored. So they won 4-0 away against Gold Coast Knights. Through to the next round. Sweet as. You sort of expect, if it's not going to be an experimental squad or a developmental sort of exercise, you're just going to pick your best players. You expect them to go there and then smash an NPL team, and that's exactly what they did. So a good start from Auckland FC, who, as well, they're like, you know, they're busy in preseason right now. They've won that game. They played a game against Brisbane Roar away over the weekend as well. So another friendly. Don't think there's any videos of that or anything like that, but I know they drew 2-2. And that means they're obviously busy, and they're busy in training. They've got their sort of wider squad involved, which takes a few players away from the reserves team, right? So you're not getting McKinlay or Middleton or Adama Koulibaly or these guys who have been, like, who were key players for the reserves through the first half of the Northern League season. They've not been available for 3 or 4 weeks because of first team training stuff. Like they're trying to earn their first team places. That's what they're doing right now. And the Auckland FC reserves have won 3 games in a row in the Northern League. they'd only won 3 games out of 15 before that. Now they've won 3 games in a row, which coincides exactly with, I think, the youngest guy, and not the youngest guy in the overall squad, but the youngest guy who's been starting games in the last couple of rounds is Luka Viselic, so son of All Whites legend Ivan Viselic, who I'm sure they said was a midfielder when they signed him. And I think he has played a bit of attacking midfield, maybe a bit more of a defensive midfielder, but he's been playing centre back for them. He's made 3 starts and they've won all 3 of them, so he might be a fella to watch in the future. But there's a few guys who have started, who've been starting fairly regularly like across this little winning streak that they've been on. So even as the first team gets busy and starts building towards another A-League campaign, even as some of the guys who were key players in the reserves team get busy with first team stuff and trying to earn their spots there, younger guys have stepped up for the reserve team who have suddenly been on a little bit of a winning streak, their best ever winning streak. They'd never won. I don't think they'd won back-to-back games before, and suddenly they've won 3 in a row. So, yeah, good stuff across the system there. The only thing that's lacking is the fact that they don't get to have a women's team this year because the A-League doesn't want to pay for it. But I think that's something to be taken into consideration with that Wellington Phoenix stuff as well. Is if it's not this year, it's likely to be next year or the year after. It's going to happen at some point. And the Wellington Phoenix have seen how the emergence of Auckland FC's men's team did a little bit of a derailment to how their men's team performed. They weren't at their best in those derby games, particularly the last one. And it's a big drop-off season from where they were the year before. Put a bit of pressure on them. So maybe this is an opportunity here for the Phoenix women to say, we're going all out in this season. We're not going to wait till that. If Auckland FC, if they thought they were going to get a team, they're not going to get a team this year in the A-League women's. We're going to go and try win the A-League women's then in this little window that's opened up instead.
Breaking news, Pia Vlock has signed with the Wellington Phoenix.
Right. Pia Vlock, who came off the bench for Auckland United on the weekend after 60 minutes and scored a hat-trick. So she doesn't play a lot of NRFL Premiership games because she plays sort of boys football normally during the winter, which is the same thing that Millie Clegg used to do at the same age for the same club at Auckland United. And also she used to score hat-tricks for that team. So they're not quite the same. Pia Vlock's more of a like winger creative midfielder, whereas Clegg is very much a striker, but there's a common lineage there, and that includes playing for the Wellington Phoenix. So good breaking news there. That's nice to hear.
Pia Vlock, who is 16 years old.
16 years old and was like a star in the National League Grand Final last year. Called up at short notice. She wasn't even going to play, and then Chloe Knott was unavailable. Pia Vlock launches into the starting lineup, scores a brilliant goal, and borderline the best player in the game as the youngest player on the field in a National League Grand Final. So that's she's also been awesome for New Zealand age grade teams. So she's definitely one of those like top tier, prodigious emerging players.
Great place to finish our podcast today. Big up to yourself. Do your best, have a crack, and we'll be recording our bonus podcast on Thursday for the Patreon whānau and those with a paid Substack subscription, so tap into that. Otherwise, big up yourself, love yourself. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, church.